London. This will date me. It's when the IRA was bombing the tube lines in London, and I was on my way to go present, and all of a sudden, the announcement came, everybody leave the tube line. And so I needed a place to go hang out, and I found an old bookstore that carried used books in it. And so I thought, well, that's a cool place to hang out. So I went in there, and I found a copy of a book called Deathbed Visions, and it had been written by a guy named Sir William Barrett, and it was published in 1926. And I was floored because it described what my clients were telling me. It described what I had experienced, and so I became more dedicated to really listening to what it was my clients in grief were talking about. And my husband and I, we have worked with all sorts of tragedies, including when the shuttle spaceship blew up. We worked with flight medicine. And when the following spaceship tragically blew up, we also worked with that too, and of course with 9/11. So every once in a while we would hear some of these accounts, and I just continued to put them together, keep them safe, locked away in a file, not really knowing what to do with them at that point.
Is there any physiological reasoning behind how, in your case, when four people had the same vision at the time of your mom's passing, how this works, or is this still one of the world's greatest mysteries?
I think that, for years and years and years, this is sort of how it worked. I had an experience when I was at Raymond Moody's house. He invited a bunch of us to come over, and he was working with what was called a psychomantium, which replicated what the ancients did when they wanted to get in contact with the afterlife. When the ancients wanted to get in contact with the afterlife, the high priestess would go and lock themselves away with some running water in a cave where there was running water, or in a room with a bowl full of water, and what they would do is that was how they made contact. And so he wanted to experiment with this, and so he built a number of these psychomantiums in his house, and then there was one built by some guy who worked at NASA. It was a pretty interesting one. When I was in one of the psychomantiums, I had no intentions of making any contact with anybody. I wasn't real sure about any of this. Well, when I was in this psychomantium, the temperature dropped, and all of a sudden, orbs began to appear, and there were vectors of light, and some of the orbs hit me, and it was just the most intense experience of love. I didn't talk about it for years. But my point being that I want to go back to our death-phobic society.
Yeah.
Because we have such a death-phobic society, when people have experiences like this, they don't know where to turn. They don't know who to talk to, and so they keep these accounts to themselves, just as I did as an early, when I was collecting the accounts in the early days. I'd go to my peers, I'd try to talk to them about it, and they'd look at me and they would say, if you put something out like that in the public, you're going to lose your business, your credibility. At that time, I was lecturing everywhere about trauma and PTSD. And the message I got from them is, you better zip it, girl. And so what I did is I thought, okay, I need to be careful about this. When my own son had a departing vision, he had a visitation from a being who, he was 3 years old, and this being came to him and was his best friend, and when I asked him about this, he looked at me like I was as dumb as a door, and he said, Damas is here to take Daw to the sky. And my father-in-law had been very, very ill. And so the clinician in me thought, well, we've had a lot of stress in our family, so I'm not going to make much out of this. But then I sat down with a rabbi friend, and I asked him if he had ever heard the term Damas, and he wrote it in Hebrew, then Aramaic, and he said, that's the angel of death. Where did your 4-year-old hear about this? So at that point, I decided that and because all these people were coming forward with this information, it was like the word was out, Carla will listen. I decided that I had to sort of stop being such a chicken, and it was time for me to be brave and put together the first book, One Last Hug, with some initial information about the topic of afterlife communication. And that was very risky. I mean, I was torn apart by Howard Stern and then torn apart by Bill Maher, and that created a real thick skin for me for future events. But I still felt very dedicated. The more people that came forward with these experiences, and you've had this experience, Rob, where they share with you,
Sure.
You're the first person I've ever told this to.
Yeah.
And there's like a sense of responsibility then to get the word out, to
Big
do
time.
something. And,
Big time.
yeah, in spite of some of the angst that we encounter ourselves, let's put it that way, being polite. So, yeah, it was the beginning of a journey.
Does a death departing vision vary from scenario to scenario, or is there one common thread that makes them all the same? I mean, besides the passing of a person.
Well, let's first talk about the person who is in the process of passing.
Okay.
That person will begin to talk about somebody that's in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Usually nobody else can see this person who's in the room. They will sometimes feel frightened about seeing this person who's in the room with them. They might react. They might become very frightened. And then what will happen is that suddenly they will begin to calm down. Later on in the show, I'll tell you about my mother-in-law and her experience. In those situations, also, people at the bedside can have experiences, like the nurse who was taking care of a guy who was getting ready to cross over, and she would bathe him and put lotion on him and take care of him, and his family was acting crazy, and she would, like mediate the situation, and she was at home, and all of a sudden she heard a voice say to her, "Thank you so much for taking care of me and being there." And she jumped out of the shower and threw her clothes on and got back to the facility where this gentleman was staying, and they said, "Oh, he just passed." And she asked for the time, and he passed at the time she heard the voice.
Wow. Carla, stand by, dear. You and I have to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. Explanation of very special lady, Carla Wills-Brandon, is my guest this hour. www.carlawillsbrandon.com. We'll be back on the other side of this news break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away. My name is Rob McConnell, and I would like to tell you about a very special lady that I have the pleasure of knowing, and that's Miss Sylvia Anthony. Sylvia Anthony believes the golden years are a time to gear up and get busy, not relax and take it easy. She has faced many hardships in her 84 years, but they have made her stronger and more determined. As founder and president of Sylvia's Haven, a shelter for women and their children near Boston, Sylvia has helped transform over 1,086 lives in the past 27 years, not only with housing, but also providing direction as to where they can go to develop the earning skills they want and need to live free from difficult domestic situations. Sylvia's Haven is everything to Sylvia Anthony, even calling it her magnificent obsession. Women who qualify for the program at Sylvia's Haven receive assistance via guidance counselors to find the appropriate job opportunity. Women and their children may remain at the housing for up to 2 years. At the end of this time, or sooner, a woman who is successfully employed and has an apartment or home may leave Sylvia's Haven to begin a new and independent life. Now this is where you come in to help make Sylvia's dream into a reality. Sylvia's dream is to have a Sylvia's Haven in every state to help as many women and their children as she can, and to help this dream come true. A crowdfunding site has been established which can be accessed at www.sylviasdream.org. Now that's www.sylviasdream.org. With your financial help and support, Sylvia Anthony will continue to help those in their time of need, not only in the Boston area, but with her dream of having a Sylvia's Haven in every state of the United States. Your help is needed to make Sylvia's dream come true. Please visit and give at www.sylviasdream.org. Once again, www.sylviasdream.org. And remember, the only difference between a dream and reality is just doing it. We need your help to make Sylvia's dream come true. Visit www.sylviasdream.org. Once again, www.sylviasdream.org. For the X Zone Radio TV show and the X Chronicles newspaper, I am Rob McConnell. Now you can dial in to listen to the X Zone Radio Show from anywhere in the world with Rob McConnell 24/7, 365 by dialing 213-401-0080. That's 213-401-0080. If you have a mobile phone or landline, the X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is now at your beck and call at 213-401-0080. That's 213-401-0080, 24/7, 365.
This is the X Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Welcome back, everyone. Carla Wills-Brandon is my special guest this hour. Her website is www.carlawillsbrandon.com. And Carla, always great talking to you. And as you and I were discussing during the news break, this topic that we're talking about is a natural law of life. And it's sad that instead of celebrating the person who has gone to the other side, we seem to grieve. And I understand grief. Please, anybody, don't get me wrong. Grief is a part of life as well. You grieve when you lose a person. You grieve when you lose a job. You even grieve when you move. But when you lose somebody that you love, that, in my book, is the ultimate grief. Also, Carla, you and I were talking about patients who form a bond with some of their caretakers. And these caretakers know, whether they're in the hospital, the hospice, or at home, when these special people cross over. There's one hospital here in Hamilton on a specific ward that when someone is getting ready to pass, patients report seeing a black dog. And when the black dog...
I've heard about those.
It seems that the black... Go ahead, sweetheart.
Well, I've heard about things like that. You have the black dog, you have the lady in white, you have some the very specific things that patients will describe. They'll talk about it. And they will also talk about a dark figure that shows up. And initially, they can be frightened. But then what tends to happen is that they recognize that this is someone who's here to escort them to the other side. You know, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, she was great. She said that everybody argues over who's going to come and get you, who's going to come and get you to take you to the other side. Like the